Welcome to Creation versus Evolution, Topic 18, Darwin's Black Box. With the release of movies such as Raiders of the Lost Ark, most people are now fully aware of the historical science of archaeology. What is archaeology? It is the hunt for and study of ancient cultures. So, like Indiana Jones, the hero of Raiders of the Lost Ark, an archaeologist's job is to carefully dig up relics and clues of the past in an attempt to reconstruct how ancient people lived. Although most people know what archaeology is, many are unaware of what pushed this historical science to the forefront of the modern era. You see, archaeology has been around for centuries, but it didn't become a serious science until the 19th century. And regretfully, that was because many people were wanting to try to discover the evidence to prove Darwin's theory true. Unfortunately, as time passed, many archaeologists began to accept the idea of evolution as fact rather than as a theory needing to be proved. And even today, many archaeologists set out with the specific purpose of finding support for the theory of evolution in the relics of man's past. The result of their biased purpose is the many one-sided, questionable, and even fanciful interpretations of relics discovered. Although archaeology was thrust to the forefront with the purpose of proving Darwin's theory true, many of its findings actually call the theory into question. You see, rather than digging up the missing link, one by one, the biblical critics' supposed errors and the mythology they claim the Bible contains are being eliminated. And rather than discovering a primitive and crude, thick-browed, stooped-over, half-human ancestor, it has shown our ancestors to have been extremely intelligent and inventive, which is contrary to evolution, but exactly what the Bible teaches. Darwin believed that with time, archaeological discoveries would validate his theory with the evidence of the slow progressive form from one kind to another. But again, the exact opposite has happened. Instead of finding the link between known organisms, as Darwin's tree of life originally pictured, it has been discovered through a lack of evidence that these links are mostly imaginary. This has proven to be a major obstacle with Darwinism. How did Darwin explain the progression from one form to another? He believed, as most all scientists of his day, that the cell was the simplest unit on the planet. It looked like a tiny glob of jello with a dark spot as the nucleus. It could do interesting things like divide and move around, but they didn't know how it did them. It was Darwin's black box, a term scientists use when describing a system or machine they find interesting, but they don't understand how to explain. Before I continue, I want to remind you that evolution can be divided into two different categories: microevolution and macroevolution. Evolutionists often misrepresent the creationist point of view by claiming that we don't believe in either one, either microevolution or macroevolution, thus attempting to make us look ignorant and unlearned. And this could not be farther from the truth. As a matter of fact, the Bible actually teaches microevolution, which is nothing more than variation within a species. What the Bible does not teach and what we don't believe in is macroevolution, or large-scale beneficial mutations, which require huge amounts of added information, genetic information, which comes about from nowhere and changes one species into another. These large-scale beneficial mutations are what geneticist John F. MacDonald has called the Great Darwinian Paradox, because they don't occur within nature. On the contrary, within nature, natural selection has only been shown to change organisms within the boundaries of the specific biblical kind. Darwin believed that the cell was the simplest unit on the planet. And he wrote in his book, Origin of Species, this is his quote, "If it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous, successive, slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down." In his book, Darwin's Black Box, Michael Behe describes several examples of such systems that need all their parts present from the very beginning in order to function. Behe shows that a slow evolution of these parts would have been impossible. What does this mean? It means that if Darwin had known back then what we know today about the complexity of the cell and its work in the human body, he would have rejected his own theory. Actually, one of the most extraordinary discoveries of the 20th century was that DNA stores information in the form of a 4-character digital cell. There are 75 trillion cells in the human body. Each of these individual cells is more complex than the most sophisticated giant-sized computer ever created, because each of them contains 200 trillion tiny groups of atoms called molecules. The largest of these molecules is called DNA and carries hereditary information from parent to offspring. The length of each DNA, each strand, is in one cell. The length of each DNA strand in one cell is 6 feet long if it were stretched out. If you stretch together the DNA strands in one human body, it would cover the distance from the Earth to the moon and back to the Earth 400 times. Now, each of these 75 trillion cells in the human body carries identical information, and the rate of error in cell division is equivalent to less than 1 letter wrong in a set of Britannica encyclopedias. Also, a 1 square inch chip of DNA could store the information that is found in over 7 billion Bibles, millions of times better than current technology. Does that sound to you like the simplest unit on the planet? Indeed, if Darwin had known back in his day what we know today about the cell of the human body, he would have rejected his own theory. Thank you for joining me today.